Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Then check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something to inspire you. That's dealtohealteas.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.com. Again, that's dealtohealteas.com. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Hey guys, this is Ernest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share our podcast on all your social media platforms and your podcast listening platforms. And also make sure you guys subscribe to our new YouTube channel. So we changed from the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast to the Deal to Heal podcasting network because we are now having more podcasts on our channel. And so you can find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast there. You also can find our partner podcast, which is the Girl Dad Discussions podcast there, as well as more podcasts that are in the pipeline that is coming up. So make sure you guys check us out. Again, subscribe to our new YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal podcasting network, and make sure you guys check that out. Also, if you ever thought about starting your own podcast, you can get your copy of the Start Your Podcast Now in only 3 steps ebook. You can go to ebooksbyejames.com. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com and get your copy of the Start Your Podcast Now in only 3 steps. That ebook is available if you ever thought about starting your own podcast. And also, guys, I'm going to tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast, but you got to stay until the end of the podcast and to the end of the episode, in order to get that information. So make sure you guys stay tuned, which I'm sure you will. Stay tuned to the end so that you can get $100. You may have be able to win $100 from the podcast. So, our product of the week, as you guys know, we are a self sustained podcast. And one of the ways that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products that you can purchase in order to support the podcast. So, this week's product of the week is our purpose journal as well as our purpose planner. You can see those if you're watching on YouTube. You can see them. They are both available on Amazon. The links are in the description. It's a purpose journal and a purpose planner because I believe that we should journal to make sure that we remember where we've been and where we are now, as well as plan for our future. So you can get your purpose journal and purpose planner from Amazon. The link is in the description. So make sure you guys check that out. So today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Miss Olivia. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I am good. I am good. First of all, let me say thank you for being here and thank you for being on because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. And so we're going to jump right in. Olivia, do me a favor, introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay. So I'm going to accept that challenge and we'll see how I do on it. So I am the owner and founder of the company Achieving Success LLC. And within it, I have 3 divisions: a book division, which is home to a book I launched and released July 1st, 2022, called Achieving Success in Career Development. And that you can find on my website, on Amazon, on kindlehuntpublishing.com, or anywhere you find books. And that covers everything from resumes and cover letters with templates. So whether you're going into a career, 15 years into a career, it can help you grow. It covers letters as well with templates, how to prep for that interview, how to think about continuously growing your career, and so on. And then I have a podcast division myself where I host my podcast, Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin, that releases every single Tuesday. And it brings on celebrities, current or former pro athletes, entrepreneurs, and employees to discuss what success means to them, both personally and professionally, and their journey getting there. You know, the high highs and low lows along the way. And that is a top 5% most listened to podcast globally, and currently the only one that is listened to in all 7 continents. And then I do a lot of speaking as well as consulting on everything from personal development, professional development, and podcasting.
All right, all right. You definitely said a mouthful. So you must be successful. So you got a whole lot of stuff going on. I want to go back a little bit though, right? Because I always love to hear the backstory. Mm-hmm. And so right now you're this career woman, written a book. You're I'm not even gonna get on that. I've been trying to write this book. I've written 4 ebooks in the time that it's been taking me to sit down and finish this one book, right? So I don't even want to go down that road. But congratulations on finishing your book. But so your career, you're doing podcasting, you have your own business, and you know you got this book also that you created and that is now for sale and also in schools as you shared. Mm-hmm. And so that's where you are now. But I'm sure you didn't start there, right? Because we all start from somewhere. So take us back a little bit to who was Olivia way back then, you know what I mean? And what was that initial thing that happened that kind of sparked you? But like, you know what? I'm going to start this company and then I'm going to teach this thing that's going to help people, you know, and spend the rest of my life helping others.
So that I feel like has a 2 answers within your question. So I'll start by going kind of farther back, about 20 years ago. I was that 9-year-old kid around that age, the star athlete. I was a swimmer. I was around 9 years old swimming with the 15, 18-year-olds and beating them. I was training for the Junior Olympics and I was diagnosed with epilepsy. I went from having very easy time in school and being that studious child to not knowing what tomorrow would look like. And it was something. Now epilepsy, there's still not a lot of knowledge on it. It's the most common neurological disease that's out there, and actually one of the fewest that people actually have information about, whether it's doctors or community. So for me, my whole life turned, and it was something where no one really knew. And I was even hearing from my initial doctors and sitting in rooms with my parents of like, if she can make it past the next year in elementary school, like that will be great. Like with the way this is progressing, who knows if we're going to get there. And I remember sitting there, and luckily I have parents who were like, okay, that's not really an answer. Like, come on.
Right. Yeah.
And they had instilled that in me. And it was a time where you, in most of our lives, when we hit moments like that, you can either, it's your fight or flight. What are you going to do? And that can be a very defining moment. And for me, I was like, okay, let's go. Let's go to battle. I am about to show, everything that everyone else is expecting. Now I'm going to show you how it can really be done. And when you don't have when you have certain expectations, how they can be defined. So for me, from that moment in time, everything I did, right, in overcoming my epilepsy, I don't have epilepsy anymore, was always, let me define what you're telling me I can do. Let me show you it can be done a different way. Let me show you it can be done in general. You're setting these boundaries and parameters on me just because that's how it's been done or the knowledge we have. That does not mean it needs to be done. And that really pushed me in everything I'd done since that age. And going back into sports in high school, I managed 4 boys athletic teams in high school, as well as became a diver and found my way back to the water and set a state record and coached. And then I went on to college to manage 2 D1 athletic programs, and became, during that time, started working for the New York Football Giants. Throughout this journey of them working professional sports for 6 years with the Giants, a few with other teams, and managing athletes, and some of them will still tell you I still manage them to this day. Like they're like, Olivia, you're really not ever getting rid of us. And then I decided to go work in supply chain. And I now have a degree or certification in every business area. I also have a minor in law and sports studies. And no matter the environment I went into, I was kind of pushing against the current. Why can't we do it this way? Yes, so what? I'm the youngest in, out of my peers, and my peers are, I sit on a few boards now for professional organizations, and I'm the youngest by a 20 age year gap. Like, okay, what's the point? We all have similar experiences. We all bring something different to the table. But when I decided to start my business, it was, my book had already been written, and I had been a professor at a university teaching career development while working in supply chain and sitting on all these boards. And I really took a step back, and I was like, the discussion that really needs to be had is around this idea of what success really is. Like, let's pull back the curtain. And because my experiences have been nothing on what society deems the path you need to go from A to C or A to B, whatever that might be, it's not looked like that. And the people I've talked to, no matter the industry, it didn't look like what high school kids are being told, what college kids are being told, what young professionals are being told. There's a very different smoke and mirrors that get put up, or not wanting to share, or lack of information. And I was like, let's actually dive into that. And that is why I started my podcast and really my consulting of like, what resources do I have? What experiences do I have to really help elevate the next person and really give them the best opportunity to succeed in whatever way that looks for them in that moment in time.
And I love that. I love that because for two things. So going back to the book that I'm writing, right? One of my opening statement is success is defined by the person in pursuit of it, right?
Mhm.
Because what I find or what I define as success may not be what you define as success. And I think one of the problems that, especially in this new climate that we are now, with social media being as strong as
Mhm.
it is, that everybody is trying to live up to someone else's idea of what success is. And because number one, it's not even your idea, and then you're trying to live up to an idea that may not even be real, and then you feel some type of way when you can't meet it. It's a no, define what success means to you, and then that way you're always in success, in pursuit of what's going to make you happy, what's going to be fulfilling to you, because it's your dream and it's your definition. And so when you talk about achieving what success means to us, let's just dive a little bit into that, because one of the things that you recently just mentioned is lack of information, which is another topic that I talk about, right? Because so if you see my background, I got the bricks, right? So I'm a bricklayer by trade, and I knew I wanted to be a bricklayer at eighth grade. Eighth grade, we was doing. I always was building stuff and working with my hands. We did a career, had to do a report on careers, and I was like, right, I know I'm working construction. It's just a matter of what. And so I'm looking through these books and all these different trades, and I see bricklaying, and I'm like, that's it. That's what I want to do. So by the time I graduated high school, I already knew what I wanted to do. I'm like, all right, let's go. I didn't know nothing about the unions. I didn't know nothing about apprenticeships. All I knew, what everybody else was told, you graduate high school, you go to college. And so I went to college, and I'm taking construction classes in college. I'm trying to find a job in construction, in the afternoons. I mean, when I'm out of school or whatever. And maybe a good 3 or 4 years go by, and I'm only going to school part time, so luckily I wasn't that far in debt or whatever. But my aunt runs into her neighbor. She has a new neighbor who moves in next door to her, and the husband just happened to be a bricklayer. And so she's talking to the wife, and she tells her that that her husband is a bricklayer. And so she gives her the information about joining the union and apprenticeship and all of that. And so she shares it with me, and I'm like, that's it. That's the way I go. Um, but with the apprenticeships, you go to work, you work, you go to school 1 day a week, you work the rest of the week. They pay for your college, they pay for all the other stuff. And I'm like, I've spent all this time taking
Mhm.
these classes that had nothing to do with bricklaying, right? It was actually carpentry, because then I don't even think they teach bricklaying in college. So I'm taking carpentry classes in construction, and I'm paying for it out of pocket, when what I really wanted to do is be a bricklayer. And had I known about the apprenticeship, and I wouldn't have wasted that time. I wouldn't have wasted that. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say wasted. I wouldn't have took so long to get into my chosen profession. It definitely would not have cost me the amount of money that it cost me to take these classes. But it was all because of limited information, because I just didn't have the information. So I'm very big now. I'm very vocal about, the trades and things like that. So
Mhm.
I go talk to schools and students and, guys on the street. If I see young guys just kind of hanging out, hey, what you guys doing? You want to make some money? You want to work hard? You ain't even got to go to college. Pick a trade,
Mhm.
go to one. Anyway, so I'm big on that because of how the lack of information played a part in my life. And so, as you were saying, not only achieving the success of figuring out what that looks like for you, and also just our life experiences. Again, that was my life experience with the lack of information. So how does that kind of work when the person is kind of trying to start up this journey and trying to figure out, okay, what is success? What is my definition of success?
Mhm.
How do you kind of help them kind of work through that and get the understanding of finding their direction?
That's a great question. And there's a few different things I do. And I always start out with really sitting there and getting to know the individual. And then through conversation, going, It sounds like you've pivoted a bit. We've all pivoted. It's what are the extremes in your pivot, right? Like what led you to those pivots? Because like those pivots in life, they're stemming from different experiences, personally and professionally. What we've learned, what we've seen, what, what's conversations are like. And I go, you do realize in those moments as we're talking, I'm explaining to them how even success has changed for them as they've decided to pivot and move. It's because their idea of what success looked like was changing. And once that light bulb goes off, I say, that's totally good. If success never changes for you, we need to have a different conversation because we all change every single day. That's the one constant in life, is that we know something new is going to happen in the next hour, the next 24 hours, week, months, whatever it might be. And all of those shape who we are. So why wouldn't it be unrealistic that our idea of success changes? What we strive for, what fulfills us can change. And it could also be where certain areas of what you've done in your past really excites you, makes you passionate, feels fulfilled, but it was never the whole thing. So what were those things in those areas that you did get excited about that made you feel those ways? And how can we then energize that into what you're kind of looking to do now, or what your idea of success looks like now, to then elevate you to that? And I think a lot of times it's identifying what those moments of real empowerment for yourself were, real fulfillment, and where were the constants. And then from there, identifying, okay, what are you looking for now? And what were those things that played a role, and how can we use them, all those different things that made you feel fulfilled, to actually move forward to whatever that looks like.
Yeah, and I like what you said because it reminded me of one of the talks that I give. I'm a speaker too, right? So of course running my mouth. So but one of the talks that I do is called Purpose Leaves Clues, right? And I tell how in your life, your purpose and the thing that you are meant to do, it's been there all the time, right? And it leaves little clues throughout your life, but it's not until you start actually looking to feel out to find out, like, okay, what is my purpose, that you start to recognize the traits that it came along, right? So one of the things that I do, I started a nonprofit a couple years ago after my mom passed away, and I started it to teach bereavement, right? Because after my mom passed, I got involved with bereavement for that time period, and I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed it so much that I again started the nonprofit to start, doing bereavement sessions, right? And so, but what happened was that moment when I really thought about it, because I was there in bereavement, and after because it was on, like, I think it was I don't remember how many weeks it was. But after my time was up, I enjoyed it so much that I became a volunteer and I stayed. So I stayed there for a whole year. And so, but in that time of me being there a whole year, a lot of families coming and going, and there was only maybe two African American families that came through there, right? And so that kind of touched me because I'm like, I know I'm part of a not a mega church, but I'm part of a nice sized church that is filled with African Americans. So I know how often we are burying people, how often we are losing people, whether to sickness or circumstance, And I'm like, so why are we not taking advantage of of this resource, which has definitely helped me a whole lot. And so one of the things I remember, though, going all the way back to when I said about the clues, is this story. I probably was like 18, 19 years old. And at this time when my mom passed away, I'm like in my 30s, And so this is like 20 years in between. But this one night, me and my cousin were going to the corner store. It's probably like 10 o'clock at night. We walk to the corner store, get whatever we're going to get. And these two guys walk in. And one guy is a smaller guy, about my size, maybe 5'4", 5'3", something like that, regular guy. The other guy is a big guy. He's like a football player, right? Probably one of the guys that work that you manage, right? So, but they came in together, but the big guy is crying, right? He's crying, and the smaller guy is trying to console him. So that first of all got my attention because it's 10 o'clock at night. It's a grown man in the store crying, and he's a big guy. So forget about, us as men being macho and trying to save face and stuff. Here's this large guy and he's crying in public, and so I'm kind of paying attention to him. And so he ended up being right in front of me when it's time for us to go to the register. And it's probably like 6 people in front of him. And so we're waiting, and I'm listening to them talk because they're standing right in front of me. And so from the conversation, I could tell it was a female who died. I don't know who, what relation she was to the guy, but I know it was a female. And so the younger guy, the smaller guy, is trying to console this large guy, right? And it's taking a long time because it's like it's 6 people in front of us or whatever. And so it just gets to the point the guy just turns around and he punches the top of the counter with his fist. Boom! Throughout the whole store, it's like echo, right? And it's like one of those moments in the movie when everything stops. It's like that's what happened, right? And he turns around and he says, "I just want some cigarettes." And so everybody moves out the way, like, "Hey, let this guy get his cigarettes," And so he get his cigarettes. They pay for him. They go out the door. I don't believe I've ever seen that guy before that moment. And I'm sure I've never seen him after that moment. But that happened, like I said, when I probably like 17, 18. That memory, I vividly can remember that whole night, or at least that whole experience. So years later, when I'm going through this bereavement for myself, and I'm looking at the fact that there's no other African American families beside those two that came through there. And then I remember this guy, and how he was having a hard time, processing the death that he was dealing with. And I'm like, we need this, right? Mm-hmm. And so that became part of my purpose. Again, I started the nonprofit, but that happened years before, you know what I'm saying? But it wasn't until I started paying attention that I could see like little things, and that was just one thing. But, in your life, you start to recognize these little traits that's been, these little nuggets, sort of like Hansel and Gretel, these little breadcrumbs that's all around, leading you to your purpose. And so I really like, what you were saying. So one of the things that I also like that you talk about is when we talk about our highs and lows, right? And we talk about, our pains and our struggles. One of the things that I've heard you say is that our struggles can be just as amazing as our success, right? And I love that so much, right? So my family and I have 8 siblings, 9 of us all together, right? And so we had these shirts made, and on the back it says Markham Made, right? Because we lived in a city called Markham, so it's called Markham Made. We always refer to it as Markham. But the house that we lived in during that time period of growing up, we went through a hard period, and there was no one around. We lived on this piece of land that my grandmother owned. It was only one house there, right? So it's like dropping this house in the middle of like a forest preserve. You know what I mean? Pretty much is what it was. So there was no other people around, just animals, and we were living in this house at this time period, and it was really tough. But with all the struggles that we went through to, just to survive and to make it through that time period, now when we talk about it, even though at the moment it was like, man, that really sucked, you know what I mean? We didn't have nothing to eat and whatever, all of that. But now as adults and the things that we learned through that process, we all say we wouldn't change it. It's like, no, I wasn't glad then, you know what I mean? But I'm glad now because all of the lessons that we learned and the resilience that we built up over the years to push through, until now that we're all, adults and having our own kids and doing our own thing. It's like, no, I wouldn't change that period for anything because those struggles helped me to become the person that I am, helped me to get the drive that I have. So when you're talking to someone and you're on that same topic, like, your struggles probably like one of the best things that can happen to you. You know?
Yeah, because it's twofold. One, you don't know what is going to come out of that struggle. You might have that struggle to prepare you for something else that's
Mhm.
coming down. The other part is look at the story you just told, right? At the time, it probably seemed very daunting, a survival mode for you and your family. But that was probably also a time that you got to spend a lot of time with your grandparents. It
Mhm.
was a time and memories made with your siblings and with your mom and grandparents where you were all a family unit and got to spend day in and day out together, where that's time you can't get back,
Yeah.
right? And those are memories you can't get back. um so it's like, yeah, it was a bad moment for you. And, in real time, you're like, why am I going through this? I don't want to go through it. Other people in your community might not be going through it. But when you look back, there are so many rewarding things, not just resiliency that came out of it and life experiences, but memories you made because you were put
Mhm.
in that. And I think that's one of the important things, especially, and I'll use when we're talking about families, grandparents that have to step in and be another parent, or family members in general
Mhm.
who have to step in for any kind of circumstances. Just, that auntie that shows up because mom has to work extra long shifts or double shifts daily to make ends meet. So auntie shows up and picks
Yeah.
you up from school every day. Auntie shows up and takes you to your games because and supports you because mom can't be there. And now you got all this time with your auntie. You're getting shown other love. You're getting
Mhm.
shown that it doesn't have to just be a parent relationship, that others can stand in when someone else can't be there and show up the way you need to show up. And that's one of the things that I think can be so powerful in our struggles. Not just that we're taught things and we have experiences that will ultimately shape how we view the world and
Mhm.
how we are as a human being. But it is something that when you look back on and you've pushed through that and you've risen above it, above those ashes, it's like, okay, I did that. So
Mhm.
now what can I do? And I always use the example when people talk to me about trauma or try to make certain levels of excuses for individuals who've gone through traumatic things. At some point when you've gone through trauma after trauma after trauma and you talk to someone who's been through certain hardships themselves, where it
Mhm.
is that thing where that was really life changing, right? There's a different level of, I think, accountability by those individuals. Like, I've actually been at that level, or, different
Mhm.
ways, but I've been there. And now you're making excuses. And I'm not saying here making excuses, like, you got to push through. But the question is, in the statement I've said recently to some people is, in those moments, are you going to rise from the ashes, or are you going to let the devil take you?
Mhm.
And it's really the question of, are you going to rise from all of these experiences and use them as a superpower to set yourself apart, to really see and what you've been through and how that has shaped you positively or negatively, and change accordingly? Or are you going to let yourself sit in that? Are you going to let yourself stoop to the level of going, well, because of all these things, I can't do this? Which person do you want to be?
Yeah, yeah, and I have a similar saying, and I say, are you going to be a victor or a victim?
Hmm.
Right? And I say, with all of our experiences that we have a choice to make once we get to the end of it. Is, am I going to be a victor of this circumstance, or I'm going to be a victim of the
And
circumstance? And those of us who choose to be victors, it then becomes our job to go back and to reach those who have fallen to be a victim, right? So tell them, hey, you can make it through because I made it through. You don't have to be a victim of this circumstance, but you can get on the other side of it and become a
and
victor.
And it's funny you're using the victim and victor wording, because, and I was kind of laughing and smiling while you're saying this, because if you listen to the TED talk I give, Are you the victor to your own story? And that's the
Mm.
mentality I use of like, my TED talk is on the topic of defeating your biggest enemy, you, how we can all get in our own way during moments of opportunity or struggle. So it's going to battle with yourself. And it's about winning those battles to end up winning the war. So it's becoming the victor to your success story and becoming the victor to each one of those battles, but also understanding that you can lose a battle, but become the victor to the end of the story.
Yeah, yeah, and I love it. I love it, and it goes back. It makes me think of something because I was thinking about everything we were just talking about, and it just reminded me when you talk about how your experiences will shape the way that you view the world, right? And so one of the things that my family went through when we were going through that period of time, when my mom and dad was really, trying to get back on our feet because originally we were like middle class, higher middle class, right? So we had the American dream, right? My
Mhm.
dad, they had the house, 3 bedroom house, they had the cars, we had a camper, we used to go on trips in the summertime, like that whole thing. We were just like, cool. Whatever happened, I don't know what happened. Something happened. My dad lost his job, went through a whole season of things, and we end up losing everything, right? And so that's how we end up staying with my grandmother. But even during that time period, we stayed with a few people, before we settled, in the house that we end up, like the little house on the prairie. Before we ended up in that house, we actually moved around, to a couple of spaces. A couple of people, took us in as a family, and so that shaped me even as an adult, right? So even when we got back on our feet, when my mom and dad bought another house, new house, started over, and we were good, my mom would still take in other people. So now it was like people were taking us in, but now we're not, we got our feet back under us. We're taking people in. And so as an adult now, I'm going to be 48 in a couple weeks. I haven't lived, I'll say, the last 10 years. The last 10 years, I haven't spent a whole year without having someone stay with me, because whether it was my kids, friends of my children, or other adults or other families, you know, but because I know that struggle, I know what it's like to lose everything and not have a place to lay your head. I've always kept my doors open. And I've said, look, I only have, a couple rooms or whatever, but I have plenty of floor. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So if you're comfortable with being on the floor, you have a roof over your head, if nothing more, if nothing less. And so, but it was because of my experiences of those people that looked out for us, and then when we got on our feet, my mom and dad taking other people in to give them that same support, to that just became a part of who I am now. So it's like, hey, you don't have no place to go. Hey, I got a floor. You know what I mean? I got a floor. You want to be outside. You know what I mean? So I love that, just our experiences really begin to shape who we are, and add so much value to the person that we become. And again, looking back on that, what is my purpose, and being able to see those things. And I'm a person that loves people. So I'm always doing something to help somebody, feed the homeless, all kind of stuff that I do, because that's just who I am. But if I look back on my life, there's been times that I've been helped, and then there was times that I was taught to help. Because I remember growing up, as I'm a PK, right? And so that's a preacher's kid, a pastor's kid, for those who don't know. So when we were younger, we went to the nursing homes and had church. We went to the,
Mhm.
I can't even think of the other name, but we went to the homeless shelters and things like that, and then brought gifts, and around Christmas time and things like that. So I was always taught to serve. I was always taught to help people. And so now as an adult, like it's like second nature to like look out for other people in some kind of way. But I don't think that without my own struggles, without the things that I went through, I definitely would not be this version of myself. Right. And I definitely would not find my definition of success is being in a position to help someone else. That's part of my definition, because I'm like, you can gain the world, but what good is it if you're the only one at the top of the mountain? You know what I'm saying? You're looking down on everyone else, but it's kind of lonely up there. So I'm like, no, I don't want to be the only one that's successful. I don't want to be the
And
only one. Yeah.
It's also the idea of, okay, you're at the top of the mountain, but there's always going to be a new mountain. So what happens when you're the person at the bottom of the mountain?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you have to remember that you're only going to be at the top of that mountain for so long. So how do you want to be treated when you're at the bottom of the mountain?
Yeah. And God forbid you should be falling down the mountain and all the people that you kicked all the way down. You want that same thing. So like I said, just going through my life and the struggles that I've had, if I was to fall for some reason, I think that I've done enough good in the world that someone would say, well, Ernest is falling, let me catch him. So I love it. Olivia, I want to say thank you. Thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for coming. I will get into talking about some podcast stuff because you do stuff with podcasting, but I know we'll go a whole nother hour. But just for the listeners and those who may be interested in doing some podcasting or getting into it, tell us a little bit about the work that you do on behalf of podcasting and podcasters. And I promise I won't say nothing so we don't be on another hour.
Well, because you and I have already talked so much about this, and as two podcast hosts, we could really probably talk about for another hour easily. But for me, it ties back to really that knowledge sharing that we've talked about and paying it forward throughout this episode. So for me, I really dove in before I started my show to learn everything about the industry so that I had the knowledge. And when I was in a room that I didn't know the answers to, I used my voice and asked the questions and said, okay, I don't know this. And what do I need to know to actually understand what you're talking about? And I think that's a big part of it is understanding whether it's in podcasting or in life, it's okay not to know everything and to ask the questions and to say, I need your guidance on this so I can understand. And so that's what I did before I got into podcasting. So very quickly, within 30 days, the podcast was in 4 countries. Within 18 weeks, it was a top 10% most listened to podcast globally. So I started getting these hosts come to me and go, I've been doing this for a while and I'm not there. How can I do that? Or guests come to me being like, I just want to tell my story. How can I do that? How can I get on podcasts? And there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I was like, okay, well, I'm an expert in it and I'm being looked at as an expert. In real time, when you're that new, you don't fully see yourself in that way all the time. And you could be years into your career and not see yourself in that way. But everyone was looking to me as that expert and knowing I would help guide them. So now I work with individuals who want to start their own podcast and share their voice, share their stories, highlight others on let's get from the idea you have for a podcast and get 8 episodes in. Let's work together and understand how, what is your title? What is your message, strategy, helping you get guests, whole gamut. We go everything from that idea to the 8 episodes in, really holding your hand and guiding you, even having my production team work with you. So you don't even have to worry about editing and uploading and all these things. And then I work with hosts like yourself who, have a podcast, who've, been successful in their podcast, but always want that check of, hey, what can I do to elevate myself? I'm moving towards a new goal. What can I do better? And I'll do what's called a podcast audit for that host. And I've had people 24 hours prior to their first episode drop to 500 episodes in. And it's about a 10 to 14 page report of, hey, you're doing these things really well. This could be improved. And here's some things you can implement right off the bat, or you could take my 4 examples of what you can be doing within this topic and tweak it to be yourself. Because there's also things I don't know about why you're doing your show or why you might be doing something a certain way. And then we'll talk after the report on if you need help implementing that and us working together, or if you have any questions on it, and so you can take it back and implement it yourself. And then I work with hosts as well to do their media kits and sponsorship decks, or helping with the small tasks that they just need the advice on. But then I also work with hosts or individuals who don't have a podcast, don't want a podcast, but want a platform to tell their story and share their knowledge and experiences with the community. And I will work with those individuals to not start their own podcast because they don't want that, but get them on the right podcast where they can do that, where it will really impact the people they are trying to touch and reach.
All right, all right. And I said I wasn't gonna say that, but I'm gonna say one thing. Well, you mentioned about not seeing yourself as the leader in the space or whatever, and so when I started podcasting, I took a podcast challenge, and the party was, I don't know, a couple hundred people in this challenge, and so I started a message thread in Messenger with like 100 people that started with me, right? And over the time that I've been in it, some people came, some people left, added new people, whatever. But it kind of got to the point where people were constantly calling me or messaging me, how do I do this? How do I do this? You know, whatever. And I'm like, I'm just starting myself. You know, it's still so much that I'm still learning or whatever. And I said, well, I know one thing. I can tell you how to start. You know what I'm saying? Now I can't tell you I can get, how to grow it to 3 million people, whatever, but I can tell you how to start. And that's kind of where how I got to writing the ebook Start Your Podcast Now, because I'm like, I can do that. I can teach you how to start. And so I started that. And actually, as we speak, this Friday will be my first class that I'm doing at a grammar school. I got a contract with a grammar school teaching a 2-month program of teaching the students how to start their podcast. And so it's kind of evolved into that, Like I said, I didn't see myself as the podcast starter guru, but I guess it is a little bit, So definitely that the way that it works out. Again, Olivia, thank you so very much for being. I'm gonna have to hit you up myself for some of this podcast work, so you can teach me some of your secrets. But I thank you so very much for being on. I want you to have the last word, and I want you to leave your social media handles and things like that. But I want you to have the last word and leave us with a word of advice or word of inspiration, however you feel. Right. And so I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that. To my listeners, make sure you guys, first of all, thank you guys for staying to the end of the episode. Right. I knew you would, but thank you anyway. Right. So make sure that you guys are checking us out on our websites. Make sure you guys are checking us out on our websites. I don't know why I keep doing that. Make sure you guys are checking us out on our websites. The dealhealfulfill.org is our main website about myself and the organization of the Deal Heal Fulfill, which the Deal to Heal with James podcast is a part of, right? But you can go there, you can find out more about me as a podcaster, as a speaker, as an author, right? And the things that we have to offer. And even you can go there to find out how to have me to come out to either host a facilitated workshop. We do various workshops, to facilitate a workshop, or to be a speaker at your next school event or organization event. So make sure you go to the dealhealfulfill.org in order to check that out. Also, make sure you guys check out our inspirational t-shirt line at Heal Tees, deal2healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Make sure you guys go there and check out our inspirational t-shirts. And last but not least, you guys can go to ebooksbyejames.com. That's ebooksbyejames.com and check out the ebooks that I have written there, including the Start Your Podcast Now in Only 3 Steps ebook. That is also available there. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com. I made it real simple. Put my name in it. ebooksbyejames.com to check out the ebooks that I have written. Also, one of the things I'm very grateful about is I've been able to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every quarter of the year talking about forgiveness, what it is, what it's not, what it means to forgive, forgiving ourselves, forgiving the world, everything around forgiveness. It's completely free. So whenever you're listening to this episode, either one just passed or there's one coming up. So make sure you guys go to forgivenessmission.com, or you can go to Eventbrite and look up Forgiveness Workshop hosted by the Forgiveness Mission in order to sign up for that free virtual workshop. Again, we do them every quarter. So whenever you listen to this, either one just ended or there's one coming up. So you can sign up for the free virtual workshop with the Forgiveness Mission. Last but not least, I told you guys I would tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast. You can win $100 from the podcast by entering our super subscriber contest. What does that mean? You must subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our Facebook page, and to our podcast on Spotify. After you've done those three things, text the word WIN, W-I-N, to the number 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100. The contest is random and it's ongoing, which means once you're in, you can always win. You don't never have to re-up, but once you enter it, you always enter it. So again, text the word WIN, W-I-N, to the number 866-326-0730. Excuse me. 30. Oh, what was I going to say? Oh, I know. Make sure also when you text the word WIN that you also send your contact information so that we can contact you if you are our $100 winner. We have people that's texting us and they're texting the word WIN, but they leave no contact information, so we don't know who you are or how to get in contact with you. So make sure you guys are leaving your contact information when you text the word WIN to the number 866-326-0730 in order to qualify to win the $100. Again, Miss Olivia, thank you so very much once again for being on. Thank you for sharing your story and your expertise with us. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, and it's been great to be on your show and answering your question that you left me with the challenge before of what would be my piece of advice is throughout your day, what is one thing you can do to move the needle in a positive way? What is that one thing you can do that will impact other people's lives? And also, what is one thing you can do to move towards your success goals? So what does that look like? And set those and continuously evaluate them every quarter, every 2 quarters, and be in tune with yourself. And then you can reach out to me on LinkedIn by searching Olivia Atkin. We also have the LinkedIn page for Achieving Success LLC. You can email me at olivia.atkin@achieving-success.com or go to the website achieving-success.com. And I answer all messages on all our platforms. You can also listen to Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin on any platform, including YouTube.
All right. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.